I think a thing that it really would help, I imagine, or I hope many Jews to appreciate about this issue is that historically, it was the case that a common Christian accusation against the Jews in Judaism is that there is something fundamentally bigoted about Jews and Judaism. Like you see this if you read 19th century novels or whatever. If you were talking to someone about Jews and Judaism in Europe, let's say in Britain in the 19th century, it would not be difficult to get them to level that kind of an accusation, because the particularism of the Jewish people, the desire of Jews to help each other, was somehow always identifiable as distastefully unchristian of Jews, right? Because the Christian ideal is you're supposed to be disposed to love all of humanity, including your enemies, and you don't live up to that standard because who can? But people who openly advertise that they're not trying to live up to that standard, that they have a different ideology that's telling them they should love their family more than they love other people's families, or they should love their people, Am Yisrael, more than they love people of other nations, and that's reflected in turn by HaKadosh Baruch Hu's particular love of Avraham Avinu and Am Yisrael. That this is about an ideological conflict between Christianity and Judaism, or really more like Christianity's self-conception as a rejection of many aspects of the Torah. And the reason I think that's important is because everyone, including Jews who are not, particularly disposed to be deeply involving their lives with the Torah, here in this society, in the state of Israel, I think they still probably should be interested to know when the rest of the world is basically trying to indict them for not being Christian enough. Because that, I think, is something that a lot of Jews can relate to as being, well, if that's the accusation, maybe I'm okay with not being Christian enough for America. And what the Western Enlightenment has done is it swept a lot of that under the rug by creating a situation where supposedly the creation of secular states and all of this kind of Enlightenment and post-Enlightenment philosophy, what that creates is the veneer of separation from the explicit Christianity of the West throughout much of its history. And so America today doesn't come to Israel and say, well, you're not Christian enough, and so we're not happy with what you're doing. But the fact is that virtually all the problems that, let's say, the US State Department has with what the state of Israel does sometimes can be couched in terms of saying, they're essentially saying, we'd like you to do things that make us feel more comfortable as Christians watching how you're running your country. And the people saying this don't even necessarily realize it, because they think that they just have universal values, right? That these are universal values of Western liberal democracies that include, each individual being completely equivalent in how they have to be regarded by the state, because anything that differs from that we call bigotry, just as more traditional Christians, let's say in the 19th century and going back, would call Judaism bigotry. So I think that's a key point that always has to be injected into this discussion if it's not there by default, is that when the United States comes and tells Am Yisrael that we can't do anything to have in our society laws that do anything to create differences between groups of people that have different assigned roles or anything like that, because that immediately brings on the accusation of bigotry. We have to always be asking ourselves the question, is this really about preventing the kind of senseless cruelty and oppression that has sometimes been associated with bigotry, or is it more being delivered in the tone of a Christian European anti-Semite whose constant accusation against the Jews is like, well, you're bigots, and what I mean by that is you're not Christian, because it is still the case that the values that are driving the policies of Western liberal countries are fundamentally drawn from that source, and they therefore are, in many regards, fundamentally uncomfortable with things that a Jewish state may find it necessary to do, but they're not going to be ever satisfied until essentially we all convert to the form of obfuscated Christianity that their policies are originating from.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.